Welcome to the solution video for the image manipulation challenge. Let's get started by going to Visual Studio, and we're going to create a new project. And for this project, we're going to kind of go back a little bit. We've been doing a lot of stuff in .NET Core, but I don't want to do a .NET Core 3.0 project since .NET Core 3.0 is not officially out yet. It's just the early releases of it, the preview releases. So I do want to do a WinForm application. So we can do WinForm or WPF. Let's find the WinForm application, which is not showing up here. Here we go. Let's go to Windows, Desktop. How about that? Interesting. So WPF. We have blank. There you go. Windows Forms. Took me a while. I'm not sure why. Windows Forms. All right. Haven't done these in a while. But Windows Form WPF doesn't really matter. It's just that Windows Forms is designed for drag and drop controls, which are really quick. So this is going to be a rapid application development type scenario. So I'm going to create, as a quick form. So image manipulator. And image manipulator app. And .NET Framework 4.7.2. Again, we're not going to do the .NET Core because it's not out yet. Hit create. And once this is done, we've got our form 1, which we'll rename to be image, I'll just call it dashboard. And it's going to ask us, do you want to rename everything, all the references? Yes, I do. The only thing that does not do, it does not rename the title bar. So where it says text right here, image manipulator by Tim Corey. Okay, so that puts that text right up there. I'm also going to change the font size, the default font size, to be something much more readable. Right now, it's set at 8, which is just horrific. Let's put it at 18. 18 sounds much more viewable. Of course, it makes my form massive, but you can change that back down. And now let's open up our toolbox and pin this. And I'm going to bring a few controls on here. So the first control is actually a file picker. So we want the open file dialog. What that's going to do is it's going to prompt us to open a dialog and select a file. So let's drag that on here, and that actually comes in down below the open file dialog 1. We're going to call this the file dialog box, and the file name we're going to change that. The file first shown in the dialog box, or the last one selected by the user. So we're going to clear this out of a file name. We could put a filter on this. We're not going to put a filter. We're not going to go crazy and setting this all up. Okay, we're just going to get it so it works. Is essentially what we're going to do. So that gives us the file dialog box. Now there's another way we can do that, and I'm going to do that way as well, just so you have kind of an either or scenario. Now notice it just puts it down here. So how do we use it? Well, you have to have a button. So let's create a label. We'll call this label the selected file. And then we'll call it the selected file label. And then we're going to have a text box right here. We'll drag that on. We'll line it up so the text is aligned. Make it quite big. And this is going to be the selected file. Let's call it selected file name. And we'll have a button. And I'm actually going to put just an ellipsis in this button. That's all I'm going to do. So we're going to call this open or select file button. So instead of button 1, we're just going to have the ellipsis, which is 3 dots, like so, which we're pretty used to seeing these kind of buttons. So we'll do that. That's going to allow us to select a file. Now, the next thing we want to do is have the new file name. So let's put that there. New file name. That makes it a little bigger, so we'll shrink down this box like so. And this is going to be the new name they give the file, which can be anything they want to be. New file name. And then we need to have a drop down. So let's copy this and paste it. We'll put it right there. And we're going to call this the new file type label. And let's just say new file type. And then our combo box, we're going to bring on here. And this is what they're going to use to select what type of file to use. Right now this form is kind of ugly, but I think it'll work. I'm not the world's best designer. So new file type, this drop down here, new file type drop down, that's going to hold PNG, JPEG, and BMP. All right, and we're going to have a button down here that is really big. Process change. Process. Okay, so that's our form in a nutshell. That's what's going to do right now for the primary challenge. So let's start piece by piece on this. Let's double click this ellipsis button to create the code behind for this event. Now we have this file dialog box. We can say file dialog box dot open file, like so, and that's going to open the dialog box, and we can actually read from it and use it. But there's another way of doing this. Oh, and sorry, before I forget, or before I mess it up, it's not the open, it's, so we have this file dialog box. We can say file dialog box dot show dialog. Sorry, there we go. That's what it was. So we can show a dialog and we can capture the results. But the other thing we can do is, instead of dragging that on the form here, we could also say open file dialog equals new open file dialog. That's essentially the same right here as what we did by dragging this onto the form. Notice that the name here, file dialog box, that's essentially the same as doing it right here. So we can do this, and maybe it's wise to show it, maybe it's not, but I'm going to delete it because I just don't like it showing up down there. I think this is easy enough, and this allows us then to do any kind of manipulation you want, and then do our if dialog dot show dialog if the result equals dialog result dot OK, meaning they hit the OK button, then we can grab that file. So we have this box here called selected file name. So selected file name dot text. hasn't loaded the actual file into memory or anything. So now I could say, okay, the new file name is going to be demo2 .bmp if I wanted to, or JPEG, like so. Now we have to figure out, do you want to put it in the same folder, or do you want to allow them to say where it should go? And maybe we should allow them to save where it should go. But I think that for right now, we'll just say that the same path that we opened it in is the one we're going to save it to. So this is going to be the new name. We probably don't even need to allow them to put the extension on. So as demo2 is the new file name. Again, this is really rough because we're just trying to work on manipulating files, changing file extensions. We're not working on making great forms. We're not working on making sure we have all our bases covered with what if the user puts in bad data, that kind of stuff. We're just worried about, can we manipulate files? All right, and the last thing we need to do is populate this right here with the 3 different types. So let's do that. Let's actually have here a list of string. We're going to call this the image types equals new list of string. And then in our, here we can say image types dot add. We can add JPG for JPEG. We can copy this line and paste it a couple more times. PNG and BMP for our 3 different file types. So now we have that, we can then bind our combo box, which is called new file type dropdown. So new file type dropdown dot data source, I almost said binding, data source equals image types. And we can leave it alone just like that, even though we haven't told it what the display member is or anything else, because it's a list of string, and so it figures out how to do that pretty quickly. So there are 3 types. We can select our file, and notice it remembered where I was last time, so I can just choose that again. I can say, demo2, and then we need to do something with the process button. Okay, so process button. Again, we're just trying to work on image manipulation. I wouldn't do actual image manipulation in the code behind for a form. Not the place to do it. That's a UI. We want to put that in a class library. But in this case, again, just for learning purposes, it's fine to put it here. Okay, so let's talk through how we're going to handle that. Well, first, we need to get the information about the path for that file. So let's start by getting that path. Let's bring in a using statement up here. We're going to need using system.io, which that's for dealing with files. So we know we have in the selected file name.txt, we have that file name. Now we didn't make that read-only, so just note that if someone were to change that, it could cause problems. But again, we're not putting in all kinds of guardrails here. We're just trying to get something to work for image manipulation. We're not trying to make a complete application. If you wanted to make a complete application, then yes, you got to guard that, make it read only from the user side. All right, so let's grab the path. So string file path equals, and it's path.get directory name, and it's for that selected file name.txt, and that will give us c:/temp if that's where you pull the file from, like we did in our example. So now we have that. Then we can build the new file name equals, and we can build this out using our string interpolation. So we can start with our file path. And we can add the slash at the end because it wouldn't be there otherwise. And then actually we need a double slash, or we need to have the at symbol here. So a single slash like that, a backslash, what that will do is that's an escape character normally. And so it'll cause problems in your string. You have to put two of them together. But that's often confusing because if you copy a file path into here, it won't work. You've got to add in double slashes. When you copy from here and put it into your Explorer, it won't work because you got to take the double slashes out. So you add the at symbol, and it says ignore any escape characters. Is essentially what it says. Now notice I have a $ still, so that string interpolation still works. So it's not ignoring the curly braces. So that's kind of a combo setting now that we can use. You can't flip it around, I don't believe. I believe you have to have $ at, not at $. In fact, let's just verify that right now. Yes, it says, yeah, you can't do that. Okay, so you gotta make sure that you get your order right here. And now it's all good. So the file path is the C:\temp. And we have another backslash. And now we're going to put the name of our new file, which is new file name.txt. I thought it was new. Oh, new file name. I call it new file. I can't do that. So I can't call it new file name here because that overrides the name of my control. So what I need to do is I need to call this new file. How about that? Or new name? New name would probably work too. It's up to us. New file. So I need to close out string interpolation. So that's going to give us the new name of the file, and then we'll add on the extension once we know which extension to use. And how do you know which extension to use? Well, we're going to do a switch statement. And we're going to switch on, and the switch is going to be based upon the new file type dropdown. New file type dropdown dot selected text is fine. We could do selected text. We could do selected item because that's also a string. Doesn't really matter. In the case, let's do our first case as JPG. Notice I'm doing the same casing as in all uppercase because we're doing a string comparison here. So when it's a JPEG, we're going to say new file plus equals .jpg. Like so. And we're going to copy this, paste it a couple more times. This will be ping, and this will be bitmap. Just make sure you change the extensions here as well. And just so you know, you can save a bitmap as .jpg. It's ugly, you shouldn't do it, but technically it's a bitmap even though it's saved as .jpg. All right, so we have JPEG, PNG, and bitmap. Those are the three types. Now we've appended that to the new file name, so that new file name is correct. So let's move on to the image saving portion. So that's we're going to create a using statement. Using image, let's call it img equals image.fromFile. And the from file is going to be where the file path. Well, actually, no, the selected file name.txt. Sorry. That's the full file name. So now we've loaded that image into the img variable. And now we can do a img.save. and we can pass in the new file, for the new file name, and then we have to give it an image format, which image format control dot add the using statement for using system.drawing.imaging. Image format dot, we have BMP, we have GIF, we have JPEG, we have PNG, we have TIFF, and others. So the problem is that yes, we want to save it, let's just say as JPEG, but that's not really scalable because now we've got to only save as JPEG, or we've got to do something different for PNGs and bitmaps. So this right here, we can also save this image format. So let's say image format equals, well, down here, we can say format equals image format dot JPEG. And we can do the same thing for these two, only this one is a PNG and this one is a bitmap. And now we can pass in here format. So that we save it to the correct format based upon what they've chosen. All right. So now, it says use of unassigned local variable. Let's just say, the reason why is because if it's not a JPEG, PNG, or bitmap, which it has to be, but it doesn't know that, if it's not one of these three things, it goes to default, which does nothing, which means that the format, in theory, could never be, is possible to not be set. So let's just set it by default to image format.jpg. So by default, it's a JPEG. We won't take it out of here, just in case someone down the road were to change that default. We want to leave it as being explicit that we're setting it up as a JPEG if we select JPEG. So now we have that in place. And again, right in the button itself, not the place to do this in a quote-unquote real application, but it's just fine for testing. Let's run this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drag us over, but I'm also going to bring up this folder. Oh, well, that's fine. So notice the demo.bitmap, which I found online. It was hard to find a bitmap, actually. Almost no one uses them because of the file size. So let's select a file. We're going to select that bitmap. We're going to call this demo. Let's call it demo. But the file type is JPEG. And hit process. And now we don't have it. It's interesting. We have demo, but it has no extension. If we add the .jpeg, it works and it opens up, but it didn't save it with an actual extension. So let's delete that. Come on, go away. There we go. And let's close this out and look at our code and find out why. So new file, we append the format right here. So why is it not saving that in the new format? Let's find out by putting a breakpoint right at the using statement. So I'm not going to bring anything over here. Let's just say test and the bitmap and hit process. And let's look at that new file. Just says test. So why is it that it didn't append the .jpeg or JPG? So let's go back up here. I'm going to drag this back up to the switch statement. I'm going to step through or step into this. And it says that the selected text is empty. I can pull up over here too. But the new file dropdown, let's find out why that's empty. Here we can search for it. New file drop down. Can search for it. Should be able to find it in our locals window. My search depth is only 3, meaning it's only 3 levels deep. To look for it, we'll see if it's interesting as not finding that. Oops. New file type. New file. There we go. New file type dropdown. Found it. All right. So let's look at the values for selected. All right. Selected text is empty, but selected item and selected value both have something. So for whatever reason, it's not populating selected text. But let's use selected item because it's a string. So let's fix that to selected item. We can take our breakpoints off. I can run this again. Let's drag this over, and we'll bring back that. If I can find my Explorer window here. There we go. So we can grab that same bitmap. We can say test this time and hit process. And now we have test.jpg. And it's that JPEG is 198 kilobytes, and the new ping is 474 kilobytes. That all has to do with the image compression that they use. Bitmap has no image compression, whereas JPEG has a ton, and ping is somewhere in the middle. So, but if you look at the files, I mean, if we open this back up, if it's going to open, there we go, and we can scroll through. You can't tell a difference. I mean, it fuzzes for a minute as it changes. That's just loading, but it looks the same. So that is how we perform the primary challenge, which is just to rename those files, which it's a little bit different than just saying, hey, change the extension. It's actually saving it as a new type, a new way of saving it. That's why the file size is so different. Okay? All right, so let's stop the application and let's move on to part 2 of the challenge. And to do this, what I'm going to do is let's just open up a new browser window and go to the '20. He's got a few new ones in here, and it's really good stuff. Well, this answer right here takes into account the majority of those recommendations. So I'm going to copy this code. In fact, I'll even copy the code comments. Was brilliant enough to write this. And second of all, if I ever had any questions about it, there's the answers. So I can now add the using statement that I need. Just do control dot. These little, if I try and mouse over and catch this, half the time I can't catch this drop down. But control dot gets it every time. So now they add that using statement in. And what this does is it brings in our image and it returns back a bitmap. But don't panic, it's not actually a bitmap file, as in BMP. Instead, it's an image. It's just an not necessarily going to get you better results as far as quicker. So I would leave them at high quality. And then this right here, this tile flip XY, what that's doing is it's actually making sure they don't lose color, as in it changes the color if we don't do this. That's one of those gotchas that if you didn't know that it did that, you might get some a low quality result. So the end result is we're going to draw an image, and that image is going to be the new size, the new width, and the new height. But the one thing it's going to do that might throw you for a loop is it keeps the same DPI. Basically, it's not going to lose anything in the image, even when you make it smaller. So that means is there's more resolution, there's more pixels per inch, kind of. It's more colors per inch. And so even though the file is going to get to a different resolution, as in pixel width versus and pixel height, it's going to have maybe some more size to it as far as file size, because it's storing more information about in every pixel. So, and I'm not an image manipulation guy. So, but again, great resource on here that tells you a lot about image manipulation. Follow that link, and if you go to this 20 image size pitfalls, it talks about, okay, why do you flip X and Y? What is it doing? How is it doing the resize? So on and so forth. So there's that flip. So with that being said, we should be able to call this. Now let's start off simple, and let's just figure out how we can create the challenge says that we need to create some way of doing a standard sizing. So let's grab these two right here, and we're going to paste them down right about here. I'm going to copy this and paste it in. I'm just putting some controls on the screen for now. And I'm going to put a checkbox here, like so. And so this is going to be the resize image label. This is going to be the resize image checkbox. And the text for this is going to be empty, which makes it look a little weird. So we move the checkbox. And this is going to say resize image. And then here, the new image, new size. Or let's look at new image size. See if it looks better. I think so. New image size. So new image size label. And new image size drop down. And then we'll bring it down a little further, and we'll have a couple more of these. Actually, let's do this. Let's bring it over here like so. Width label. W colon, and bring that up right like so. We'll copy this, we'll paste it again, bring this over, adjust in the right spot, and make this height. Think that works. Let's give us a little more space. Not quite that much. I'm obsessing a little bit. I do that. It's one of those quirks. I have a hard time saying leave it alone. Okay, so the width text and the height text. And we'll say manual size label, manual size, like so. So now what will happen is if you want to set the manual size, you can. You can set the manual size right here, or you can select from the drop down, say 640 by 480. And that will populate 640 and 480. Okay, so we've got to wire these up now as well. Let's go back over the dashboard, and let's keep it simple. So list of string again. I'm gonna get a little more complicated. It can be a curse sometimes, but at the same time, if you do it right, then you learn a little more. So let's say the image size model. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I can have a string that is the image size text, and then I can have an int that is height and an int that is width. That way I don't have to do conversions or have anything weird with a switch statement. So now with this image size model, my list can be of image size model, image sizes equals new list of image size model. And then here I can say image sizes dot add new image size model, and I can, let's format this. I can say the image size text is going to be 640 by 480. And then the width is going to be 640. And the height is going to be 480. So that's one standard size. Another standard size could be 800 by 600. And I'm just putting the standard resolutions in here for a screen. Something like that. And my bitmap I know is a 1024. I'm pretty sure it's a 1024 by 768. Let me go to properties here. Details, yes, 1024 by 768. So there, that's a 4:3 ratio, just so you know. So I'm going to keep the 4:3 ratios going. And I'm not going to go above that size. I'm just going to leave these two sizes in place. You could put other sizes in place if you want, especially if you're anticipating bringing in, like, let's say, a 1920 by 1080 file. And in that case, then you could have a whole range of sizes. But I'm going to keep just these two sizes for now. So with those two sizes in place, I can say the new size image size dropdown dot data source equals image sizes. I do have to set, though, my new image size dropdown dot display member equal to be name of, and that's the image size model dot image size text. Now I use the name of here because display member takes a string. And I could just put image size text in a string right here, but if I typed it wrong, or if I said image size instead of image size text or something of that nature, then it would not properly display. So instead what's going to happen is I am going to say name of, which goes and looks at this image size model, and it grabs this property and it converts this property into a string. Now it does this in a very efficient manner. Don't think this is not the same thing as reflection, which is a little harder. Okay. So what we're going to do now is, now we have this, it should be that when we start up, let's just make sure this works first. And it does. New image size, we can select. And if they check this box here, which is rather small, WinForms does not allow, a standard checkbox does not allow us to resize this thing. So it's really tiny. And it's always bugged me. I've always tried to replace that with a custom control of some kind. But new image size, we can select. Now we want it to populate these two values. And then we're going to use that if it's checked when we process. So let's do this. Let's check this out. Let's go to our events for this dropdown, and selected index changed is fine. What we're going to do is we're going to grab the selected index, or selected item, I'm sorry, and as long as it's not null. So if new image size dropdown dot selected item equals null, then return. What that does is make sure that there's something selected, because if we didn't add something to the new image size dropdown, or if it fires before we put something in the list, then it'd be null and we'd cause problems when we try to convert it. So now we can say this is a image size model. So image size model, and let's say, let's call it size, equals image size model for new, let's just copy and paste, new image size dropdown dot selected item. What that does is selected item is an object. We can cast it using and the height text dot text equals size dot height to string. And the reason why I have to put to string here is because these are integers. And while it feels like we should be able to put an integer into a string because you just put quotes around it, the reality is that is a different type. And so we do need to change it over to the correct type first. And that's what the toString does. So that being done, now that should populate whenever we run this. Let's just verify this is true. Notice 640 by 480. If I change this to 800 by 600, it now changes the height and width. Even though I can say 800 here as well, and that'll accept it. But if I change it back, it's going to overwrite it. Okay, so now we're going to need to check to see if this is checked. If it is, we're going to take these two values here as the new size. So if that is selected, let's go back up here and look at our process. Our process is right here, process changed files. It's going to do a conversion. I'm going to leave it doing the conversion. We can say don't convert or convert to the same type we wanted to. We can put a checkbox in here that says don't worry about conversion. I'm going to leave it. So it's going to convert either way. I'm just being a little bit lazy here because of the time factor. Okay, so instead of just doing image save right here, what we're going to do first is we're going to see if we should resize it. Okay, so let's comment this out for now and say if we need to grab the resize image checkbox. So resize image checkbox, resize image checkbox dot checked, and that's whether or not the checkbox is in the checked state. Okay? If it's checked, meaning yes, then what we'll do is we will resize our image. So var img to save equals, or let's just do resized image. Resized image equals, and we have this resize image. So resize image, pass in our image, img, pass in our width, which what we're going to do is do an int parse, and we'll grab our text box. So this is the width text dot text and int dot parse for the height text dot text. Oops. Height text dot text. Now, I am doing int dot parse here, meaning I am trusting that the values in these boxes are in fact integers. Again, this is a demo. If it's a real application, I would not trust that they're integers. I'd have some kind of conversion routine first that would do a verification that these are in fact integers, return them into integers, and if they weren't, I would not allow the process to continue. So just know that's the case. Now, once I have my resized image, notice it's a bitmap, not an image. Doesn't really matter. So you can do resized image. There we go. Resized image dot save new file format. Okay, just what we did up here. So what that means is if it's not checked, just save that image. Okay, so if it's checked, resize it and then save it. Otherwise, just save it. Now let's run this again. And we're going to bring back our our window. We're going to grab that same bitmap. Let's go ahead and call it test. We'll convert it to a JPEG, but we are going to resize the image to 800 by 600. And hit process. There's test. It seems like it still looks great, but it does look smaller. Okay. If we go to the properties for that and go to details, the dimensions are 800 by 600. So we've now resized and changed the file type of that file. So the JPEG is now 103 kilobytes compared to the bitmap of 769 kilobytes. If we were to do this again, but not do the resize and do test 2, so now you have two JPEGs. One is 103, one is 198. So it does definitely make a difference. We can even do a third time. And this time, let's do 80 by 60. Makes a very tiny image. Oh, no, it doesn't. Because test 3, I had not checked the box. Check the box. Now process it. Now it's a very tiny image of 1.96 kilobytes. And there's our image. Okay? So you can make a thumbnail if you wanted to. You can make an image for display on a smaller size. Okay? And again, it'll work for different file types. There's our ping. That ping is 13 kilobytes, even though it's that very tiny size. Okay, so that is the bonus challenge. We have done the conversion. We've also done the resize optionally. And if we wanted to do the conversion optionally too, we could. Either we could say, well, this technically is not a conversion necessarily, but we could also put a checkbox up here that says, do you want to convert? And then it wouldn't do this stuff. In any event, we've done that. We've also done the resize, and that was pretty easy because someone else has done the hard work for us of figuring out what all these settings should be. So we're just kind of, again, standing on the shoulders of giants. And this is not my code, so there is the link to that code and the explanations, great explanations, much more than I could have done. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new and also kind of stretched yourself in the area of image manipulation. Thanks for watching, and as always, I am Tim Corey.